Hi, welcome back. Today we want to talk about authority. Is there a universal moral law based on this concept of authority? So let's think about this. Is everyone under authority? Let's think about that. Is this a universal principle among all humans? All right, first let's begin with this question. What are the institutions of culture and why are they all broken? I like to tell my students I think everything is broken. Now, I did have a class recently disagree with me. They're like, no, that's not true. Not everything is broken. And I thought, okay, yes, they are. Okay, so that's my challenge to you. Is everything broken? Especially right now. Just look around. What institution is functioning the best right now? What are the institutions? You know what? I am going to pause and go to the whiteboard for this one. You want to go to the whiteboard? Let's do it. All right, so here we are at my whiteboard, and I've put up the institutions of culture. We have family, church, state, education, and business, or the economy. So these are the institutions of culture, and I'm suggesting these institutions are broken. So let's think about that. And notice I've put them under the moral law. I've situated them under the moral law. So what does this mean? And how is authority universal? So we're born ignorant. Isn't that true? Do you think everyone is born not knowing? We don't know the good, right? We're not born knowing the good. We need to be taught about the good. So we need to be taught the good and the means to the good. And what institution are we first born into? Family, right? So it seems like family is the institution that teaches us about what the good is and the means to the good. And authority is fundamentally expressed in teaching. So authority teaches. Parents teach children. Let's look at the nature of this one. So that's the origin. We're born ignorant. And we need to be taught the good and the means to the good. Is this a universal? Is this true of all human beings? The nature of this one, authority is rational, not personal. Authority is based on insight into the good and the means to the good. So think about what makes a person an authority, a legitimate authority figure. It's not based on might. So authority is based on insight. It's not based on might, force, assertion, and insight is historically cumulative. It's not individual. So authority is cumulative. Insight is cumulative. We're going to have to think about that in each of these institutions now. All right, so think about the nature of this. Authority is rational. It's not personal. Is that true? And let's look at the law. Authority based on insight must be honored. Okay, so this is about honoring authority, honoring those who have insight. But authority without insight must be changed where possible. So think about that. You can't really change your family. You're kind of stuck with your parents, you're stuck with your grandparents, your siblings, right? You can't change your family. But can you change where you go to church if you go to church? Can you change who leads you? At least in this country we can, right? We can vote. Can you change where you go to school, who you take classes with? Yeah, it seems like you have a little power over that. Can you change what businesses you frequent, who you support? Yes, we do that, right? I like to think I am the market economy. I'm going to purchase things according to my values. I think we all do that, right? So we can change some things. We can't change all things, though. And sometimes when you're in a country, you have a president. That's your president, right? You're in a educational situation. You have a teacher. That's your teacher, right? You can't change that, but you can vote, and you can go to, I don't know, rate my professors before you take a class to kind of get a sense of this teacher. Maybe even meet a teacher. Look at some of the things they teach, their syllabus. You can make decisions that are informed when you put yourself under a position a person in a position of authority, right? You don't have to just blindly follow. So we do have some control over authority and changing authority where possible. All right, so applications. Do we want to make this a universal? Authority based on insight must be honored, and authority not based on insight must be changed where possible. Or, put another way, only people with insight should lead us. I don't know. Seems like I could make that a universal. All right, so here are some applications. We have to talk about the natural order of authority in each person and in each institution. So let's see, where do I have the most space? Over here. It says, there's a natural order of authority in each person, intellect, emotion, and will. So let's put that over here. Intellect, emotion, and will, which connects to reason, desire, and action, right? So this comes first, and then the others. So there's a natural order of authority in ourselves. This is where it starts first. So our intellect should lead our emotions and our will. So reason leads desire and action. We've talked about that a lot, right? You see me looking down here. It's because Keno is laying right here at my feet, and I don't want to trip over him, but I do need to get to the other side of the board here. Okay. The next application is going to be, there's an order of authority in each institution. So in these institutions, there's an order of authority, and thank you, Keno. The philosophical, just as in ourselves, the intellect should rule, so the philosophical should rule the psychological and the practical. Remember, in the moral law, right before this, we were talking about, it was about integrity. We talked about reason or the concern for truth should lead over psychological and practical needs. Well, here, the philosophical in each of these institutions should lead over the psychological and the practical. That's corresponding to how we lead in ourselves, too. So think about that. Insight's going to require that someone in the institution has insight into the good, and not just the good for that particular institution, and how that institution's organized and will lead us to the ultimate good, or the moral law applied in society. All right, so there's an order of authority in each institution. The philosophical comes first, then the psychological and practical. This is kind of like Plato talking about the philosopher king should lead, meaning those who understand the nature of things should lead. Understanding should come before feelings and doing. Okay, now let's talk about the relationship of these institutions. I'm going to go over here, I think. Yeah. All right, so among institutions, no institution is total. Notice I put them side by side, not hierarchical in any way. No institution is total. Each is equally under the moral law according to its form and function. So let's talk about that. Each institution has a form. A form is like its logos. It's like its organizing principle. It's what keeps it unified. So there's a form of an institution and a function, what it does. So each is equally under the moral law according to its form and function. So the moral law should point them all to the good. So let's do this, the good. But how is the good going to be achieved in each of these institutions according to its form and function? This is where we get breakdown. Okay, look at the 8th point here. The church and state are equally under the moral law. So we have questions about church and state. What's their relationship? This is opposed to a theonomous church and an autonomous state. So theonomous church is where the church becomes the law of the land, or the law of God becomes the law of the nation. This has happened in the past, right? This is why we have this clause in the Constitution of the no establishment of religion and the free exercise of religion, because we don't want church and state to be so close as they have been in the past. But it's also opposed to an autonomous state. An autonomous state is where the state becomes a law unto itself. It has no outside moral authority, no outside moral code. The state itself becomes the moral code and imposes that moral code on the rest of us. That's a problem too, when the state becomes a totalizing institution and gives us the moral code. That's not the job of the state. You should be thinking about that too. What is the job of the church? What is the job of the state? What is its form and what is its function? It seems to me that the function of the church is to inform people of the moral law in a particular sense, a redemptive sense. So the church helps people overcome moral evil, discipline in a spiritual sense, whereas the state overcomes external evil, either crime inside the state or war, invaders from outside. The state is to protect the citizens and protect the citizens' rights so the citizens can practice the free exercise of their religion. All right, so church and state are equally under the moral law. The state and the family, okay, so here's the relationship between the state and the family. They're equally under the moral law. This is opposed to public education as religiously neutral and to the welfare state. So let's talk about this. Ooh, do I have enough room on the board to write some more? I think I do. So let's talk about this. Can you see if I write over here? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to do, if something is public, then it's shared. That's what public means. It's shared, right? And it should be neutral in a way, right? But if it's education, then it's interpretive. And if it's interpretive, then it's not neutral or shared. So shared means neutral. Should be neutral, right? If it's shared, if it's public. If it's education, then it's interpreted. Like an interpretation. Like I'm giving you an interpretation right now of the moral law. And if it's interpreted, then it's not neutral. Right? So this is, if it's public, then it's necessarily neutral. But if it's education, then it's not possibly neutral. So we have a problem when we put public plus education together, because we have something that's supposed to be neutral, but it's not possibly neutral. And so we get these problems with funding. What kinds of programs should we fund? What should we talk about? What can't be talked about in public education? So what we should do instead is say, no, it's not neutral, and we need to equip people to think critically, to work through the things that are interpretations and test the interpretation. So we need to equip people philosophically in public education. Or maybe we should just say, this education is biased no matter what you do. There's other questions we can address too. Should we privatize education? So there are applications of this moral law. And it's also opposed to the welfare state. Ugh, this is a question we're dealing with right now. Right? Should the government be supporting us? Should the government be giving us checks because we're not making money? Perhaps if it's a matter of protecting people, but how much is a safety net and how much is a welfare state where people become dependent on the state? And if people become comfortable with what they're receiving from the state, are they disinclined to engage in their work, the work of dominion? So does the welfare state become disincentive to working and developing all the powers that are latent in the world to be developed? Okay, next, the state and business. So the state and business are equally under the moral law. This is opposed to an unrestrained market, as in capitalism, unrestrained capitalism. Capitalism has its downsides, right? I'm into capitalism, but not into an unbridled, unchecked, whatever goes capitalism. It's under the moral law. So, unrestrained market, and to a bureaucratically controlled market, as in communism. So communism is where the state becomes the owner. So what happens is, in capitalism, humans own absolutely. This is mine. And in communism, the state owns absolutely. There's a problem with absolute ownership, though, right? So this is something we're going to talk about soon in the future. All right, so some of the applications having to do with the institutions of culture and the brokenness of these institutions. All right, what are the consequences of this moral law? Authority without insight into the good subverts and perverts the good. So when we have people ruling in each of these areas that don't know the good, they don't know the good for that institution, they don't know the good for humanity, then the good will be subverted, undermined, and perverted, changed into something else. But authority based on insight protects and is productive of the good. Imagine if each of these institutions, those who led philosophically first. The philosophical is like the people with insight into the good for that institution and for the greater good. If they led, then they can help the people do their job, the management level people, and the doers to get it done. If society was ordered in this way, we had order in ourselves first, order in the leadership of each institution, and each institution under the moral law, then we would be protective and productive of the good. So you are the future world leaders. You think, no, not me, but yeah, someday you're going to have a family, you're going to be in these institutions, you're already in these institutions. How are you going to lead? Are you going to lead for the good? That's my hope. All right, thank you, and thanks for letting me experiment with the new whiteboard. I hope you join me for the next one. We're going to talk about human dignity next. Ooh, this is where there's so many applications. All right, take care for now.